Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
Every episode, we are so honored and blessed to share stories with amazing, compassionate, and wise guests. So let's get started. In this episode, we are pleased to welcome Tajali Theresa Tolan, MS. Tajali is a certified mindfulness educator, peace educator, marriage and family therapist, family life educator, and registered yoga teacher. She's the founder of both the Children's Global Peace Project and the Consciousness Project, an empowerment life coaching counseling business. She holds an MS in educational psychology and a BS in family life education.
Tajali is passionate about teaching social-emotional awareness and mindfulness skills. She specializes in creative expression, communication, healthy parent-child relationships, and peace work. Over the course of 30 years, she has developed and led 35 children's peace camps. Tajali is a certified Dances of Universal Peace leader and mentor on the board of the Dances of Universal Peace North America. She is also an ordained minister, Cheraga, in the Church of All, and she leads Universal Worship Service. Thank you, Tajali, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So great to have you with us. We always like to start with this question to just kind of set the tone. And that is, when did you first become aware of death?
It's such a powerful question. When I was 7, I remember having the measles. I have 4 siblings and we're within 4 years of each other. And we're all within 4 years. And we all had the measles one year and chickenpox the next year. And I don't remember if it was my 6th or 7th year, but I remember feeling terror that my parents were going to die. And it was inexplicable because I'm not a frightful child. I'm pretty brave and courageous. So that was the first time. And then through school, I went to parochial school and there was a lot about death. You can die and you either go to heaven or you go to hell. So it was indoctrinated. And I had a fascination not really with death or even with living. I was living, but I was fascinated about connection and spiritual path from a really young age. And so that was kind of the foundation of how do you know? How do you know about heaven and hell? How do you know what happens after we die? And so on. Oh, there was purgatory. That was a really fascinating thing to me. Like, what is purgatory? I want to see that place first. But then where I really got to experience death, I noticed or saw my great-grandmother dying. I had a really close interaction in that her daughter, my grandmother, took care of her, and she was in a lot of pain, and it seemed a little scary. I didn't know how to approach that or be within that. If we came within the room, I could feel things. Certainly wanted to help, but I felt a little anxious being around it. And then when I was 19 and a medical assistant and then an EMT at a family practice clinic in a very small rural town, I was called. This is my first experience of death. Is that I was called on a non-responsive call, a man who was 88, and we got lost in the woods finding his place and got there, and there was a candlelit room and he was lying on the floor and he was not responsive. We did CPR for a long while, and could not revive him. And there were 2 tracks that I know that were going on. One was, I need to revive him. This is my job to save him, and feeling helpless that I couldn't. But at the same time, and this is the overarching and I think foundational moment, is that there was such holiness in the room that it was what light could be felt like. It felt illuminated. And I remember holding hands with his wife who was crying and having my hand on his shoulder and just feeling this reverence. And it's not that feeling of, did I do it right, or could I have done more? It was just the reverence that was really, really holy. And then many subsequent experiences happened in that I worked in this rural clinic that was next to a hospital, and as an EMT and a medical assistant, I was able to interface the hospital and people's lives in a way that wouldn't have been granted to a 20-year-old without a lot of training. And part of that was I was asked by some of our patients who had terminal cancer to come and sit with them. They just said, will you come and be with me? And I didn't really understand that, but I liked them and I cared about them. And so I started visiting people who were terminal in the hospital who had cancer. And also, I'll come back to that in a second, also being asked to witness and be with women who were having babies, young mothers who didn't have a partner at that point. And when I look back and reflect, it was kind of miraculous that I was invited into these stations. And with this first birth, the woman was 16 or 17. And after 24 hours or 30 hours of labor, when her baby was born, that same light filled the room. I had this visceral experience of something opening. And I remembered the man who had died of being with him. And also this experience, it seemed the same. And I knew cognitively it wasn't the same. Someone was coming, somebody was going. There were many opportunities to witness people dying. I think initially the hardest ones were the tragic deaths that I came upon that I'm not going to describe, but you can imagine, either by car accident or train. And yet there was something that was there that was greater than what I was experiencing. And I think at that time, at that time, there was this running incompetent, am I doing it right with people who are dying? How do you be with somebody who is dying and manage both the fear of, am I doing it right? Could I be doing something more? This predominant, you must try to save them. But yet, something I didn't understand at that point, there was this reverence about it's not preventable and it shouldn't be preventable. It's a holy station. So I found this book. I don't know how it came to me, that I would recommend to anybody to read, by Stephen Levine, called Who Dies? And as I was thinking about this and wanting to share about this, because it's a very profound book, has stayed with me. It's like, I'm going to read it again. But in there, he has a lot of breathing and witnessing practices, compassionate practice. And he said, meet whomever you're with your breath. Match your breath to their breath as this beautiful communion of compassion. And that really, I feel like that was my PhD school about how to be in life. And I'm still learning it. And the breath is so powerful and presence is so powerful. But that was the initiation that this is how you can be with someone who is dying.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah. Being with each other's breath.
Mm-hmm. This is, it feels like you had your PhD early on. the universe just
formally get it. It was from the universe, yes.
Yes, right. You got the initial download straight from source, and you were very aware of death. And so, how has death impacted the story of your life? Like, I mean, it feels like it's been continuously through this.
Yes, that's a really interesting question, because I think that because of my religious upbringing and the dogma of religions, there's this, am I going to do it right? Am I going to get it? Is my life going to be meaningful? And it has only been recently that I think through just the incredible life experiences, but also spiritual practices of recognizing there's many kinds of death. There's a death of an ego. There's death of relationships. And in my Buddhist practice, those are just changes. They're just transitions. And it's interesting. We could talk for hours. I could talk for hours about that ontological meaning of the word death, because there's this finality, but really it's transition.
Right.
And that we as humans tend to fear what we don't know, and so we create stories to help us feel safe and secure about whatever transition is happening in predictability. Hence angels and heaven, and or from different traditions, this oneness. And I've embraced them all. Yeah. But I think that one of the most interesting ones is the death of the ego, or death of our self. I didn't think about this in preparing for the talk, about how we attach ourselves to labels,
Right.
or identity. And that, I think, is something if there's anything in thinking about death for me personally, is that, have I lived my life purpose? And that's an ongoing question for me. Mm-hmm. And it also brings me, it flows through my work. And when I'm with people who are dying, that's the presence I want to hold or container for them, to help them reflect that their life has been meaningful. Mm-hmm. That I can hold that presence. And if they are curious or concerned or scared about that, to help reflect that they didn't even have to do anything, just by being, their life is meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Grace. Yeah. Grace, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue to telling us a little more about your current work, or the role that you're playing, and the kind of things that you're doing in this regard, or in any regard.
Thank you. I am working as a coach, counselor. I have my own business that from home since COVID. Thankfully, with Zoom, we can connect with people. I do see people individually, and it involves family relations, parenting, but many times it's, how can I reconcile whatever challenge is present for me? I really seek to support people and to know their own worth and contribution. My tagline is, be your brilliance, and I can help mirror your brilliance in whatever capacity feels right for you. And it's an opportunity to not impose any dogma or any standard of what that would be like. I think, as I'm going to segue for a second, when I think about oneness, I've thought about, how can we be one with all these different expressions and different viewpoints? I have a little bit closer understanding that it can happen, or a belief that it can happen. But we live in this dualistic dichotomy world that is holding up edges and corners that say yes or no, and you can't and you can. So I bring a space where a presence to help people know themselves and celebrate themselves. I also teach mindfulness and in schools in Montana, and I'm a yoga teacher. I'm an artist, so I'm the eclectic Renaissance human, and that purpose is to.
Well, I think that you ended up picking up a couple different missions before you came down. You're like, oh, I kind of like that one too. Let me grab that mission and this mission. I know I can do this. I know I can. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. And with your different roles, what are your biggest challenges with regards to reminding people their brilliance.
I think it is holding space. That space, and just the flash came back to my first person who was in the hospital and he had cancer, and I felt like, what can I do for you? And learning just being present with someone. Recently, this is a little segue, but it will wrap into the challenges. In the last year, a very good friend of mine died. And it was interesting because she started talking to me about death. And we were a newer friend. We were in a hiking group. And she was 72. And when I die, if I die and you're there, I don't want you to resuscitate me. Like, why are you telling me this? Because I don't plan to be with you. I mean, why would you have me be with you when you die? But she went through and talked, and she was really doing a life review of her life and what she wanted and what she needed to complete. And I didn't think that she was going to die. She didn't seem unhealthy, but the last 8 weeks of her life fell, and she was dying. And she asked me to be with her as well as others. And so I was with her in that dying process. And there wasn't any resistance. In fact, anybody who was around her, who loved her dearly and couldn't believe that she was actually dying and wanted her to live. And inside of me was this place of, this is her choice, her and the divine, and what can I do to hold space for this to unfold? And if anything about challenges of my own work, it comes to that recognition that I'm only holding space. I don't have to know the answers. In fact, the answers are inside the person who I'm with for them. But it's the ego reminder that you don't have to do anything. You just have to be here and hold space. And that doesn't necessarily fit in with our culture. That is speedy, quick.
Right.
That we have to be, the identity of success is how much you make, how many people you work with, and this continual race to get something that is, one, not attainable, and two, not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's my other challenge.
Yeah. And going back to, you use the term holding space, and Wakil and I understand what you're saying. Could you, just for the listener who wants to know more about that, could you describe what holding space for somebody feels like, or thinks like, or looks like?
Thank you. Oh, I love that. The holding space, I think about, I'm holding my hands up and like imagining water in it, and just that lightness of water, and feeling the coolness of water, and honoring water. Holding space has all of that in it. Your attention is leaning into what is the presence of the other human or animal that you're with, because I also do work with animals. As little kids, my sister and I would save birds that were kicked out of the nest, and we'd bring them in, and they had no feathers, and they were definitely dying, and we thought we could save them. But holding them tenderly with compassion, without a derived outcome. Often I will use a heart-centered practice of just radiating gratitude and love from my heart for whomever I'm with. So I clear the deck of what's happening in my own mind, of what I think I need to do or what needs to be done, and drop into my breath and presence of heart to be with them.
That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds right. So what kinds of things help you feel supported?
presence,
Mm-hmm.
and kindness. This, how I approach other humans is how I want to be approached. But again, I've had this visual that I'm carving doorways into consciousness since I was younger, because somehow I had a different idea about how we relate to people, and it's not putting them down. It's not the strata of who's better or worse. And so in a world that still uses that measuring stick about value, I know I resonate with that kind of support back to me. And I seek it out. I have my practices of meditation or mindfulness, my Sufi spiritual practices, dancing, art, expression of art. And so those are the ways that I get support and work to create it happening around me. But that's not always, it's not always happening in that way.
We really, when you and I talked about this early on, it was around the mindfulness practice.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could speak a little more to how that applies when you're supporting yourself and or being in holding space for others.
Yes. I'm glad you asked that, because where I'm at right now with my own mission and purpose is that the space of transformation and compassion begins with our breath. It begins with dropping into what's happening in our body. What are the quality of our thoughts? What emotion might we be feeling? And then connecting with our breath and being present with it, however it is showing up. And I'm doing that right now.
I noticed that too. And I immediately was like,
oh, yeah.
I did it as soon as I saw you.
Beautiful. Yes. And that it's a coming home into ourselves. Again, there's more and more of this attunement and this way of being than ever before. I know historically it was reserved for people who were clergy or nuns or spiritual seekers who would go off and meditate in the mountains. And my son is 43, and when he was 3, I remember having this really profound experience of being out with the trees in the yard. I lived on a little farm, and thinking, I want to support his spirit. I don't know how. And it wasn't, I don't know how to do it. And I was scared. It was like, please show me how I can support his spirit. And it led me on a path. And I think it was somewhat in reconciliation of the kind of support that I didn't get as a child. Bless my parents. They did absolutely the best they knew. But I know I was a child of deeply curious and loving and spontaneous to all living things. And my mom didn't understand that. So I had this passion when my son was that age of like, how can I hold space for him to know his own spiritual essence, even though I didn't even know what that really was at that point. And that started me on a path, which led me to the Children's Global Peace Project. It wouldn't evolve for another 15 years or 20 years, so about 15 years. But this space of the children have this knowledge. We come in with this connection to spirit that is not necessarily recognized. And when I started Googling, which computers were just coming out around then, there was nothing about the spiritual development of the human. I had not found the Sufi path at that point, or Hazrat and Khan's work. I had begun to learn about Maria Montessori and Rudolf Steiner, who all of them guided me in guiding my children, but there was very little at that point. Now, as I do this work, there are millions of information that are on the internet, which is affirmation for me that we are evolving to even consider our spiritual essence, our spiritual development as something that everybody's interested in. And while we're distracted by the news and the wars that are happening, and I want them to end, and I know they're real, and I have compassion for the people experiencing, there's this whole other expression that's coming through that is embracing spirituality or embracing spirit. Humans, I think, are waking up to we are spiritual beings. And what a beautiful thing. I have no idea if I answered your question.
Well, may that be so.
Yes, it was so. 100%. So, Tajali, let's. I don't want to ask this question without wrapping it up into what you just said, how we are all more aware of our spirits and kind of we're growing our spirits in this land, right? And so we all want to know what to do and how to do it. But there is an end. This life is finite. And, you know, that's also a spiritual being who will blink out into the next iteration of itself. But do you have any fears around the end of life?
I know I used to. And I think, truthfully, if I had a terminal diagnosis, my initial reaction would be, not yet, I'm not ready yet. A little aside, I've told my kids I've had an intuition that I'm going to live to 120 for a long time. And recently, in the last couple of years, as I witnessed both the expansion of compassion and common humanity that we're awakening to, and also the atrocities that are there, I've said, tongue in cheek, I'm going to rescind my Earth assignment rank. I think it would be, have I completed my purpose? Have I done here? Come here to complete what it is. And that has been an active intention for the last 4 or 5 years of just, okay. And having witnessed my parents who, their dying process, my mom died in 2018 and my dad in 20, and they were so uncomfortable and fearful of death. And my sisters and I supported them pretty much on the ground weekly for over 6 or 7 years. And they were angry and scared. And I wanted to say, it's okay. It's okay. And so that's what I want for myself, that I don't want to be angry going out. And so where I think that arises, and it comes in that, as I was thinking about your podcast and your focus, is that how we live is how we die. And that the purpose is to recognize the miracle that you are and be that. And then the transition of death is just a transition. Not just, it's a holy transition.
Right. Yes. Amen. May it be so.
Something that I've done that I think I didn't realize that this is one of my support anchors. So funny, we think we need other humans to be the support, but I'm now recognizing this as a resource that I've resourced myself. I'm an artist, I'm a watercolor artist, but when I had my son, it was 3 days of labor. And that was the first time. And I ended up with a C-section. And I remember thinking I could die, that this might be my death. I may not make it through. And had the same thing with my daughter 17 years later. They're far apart because it was another 3-day of labor. It was like, I could die. Am I ready to die? And I would feel sad about not seeing my children grow up or grandchildren. But it was really this pivotal moment, like, I could really die right now. So those things are in me. When I came to having a hip replacement, I created mandalas that I drew, and they were prayer mandalas that were healing to put up in the hospital room around me, and used it because art and beauty everywhere is always in dialogue with us. And so that started people asking me to do some for them. And then the last 5 years, I've been just in every free moment, I'm drawing angels on black pieces of paper. Sometimes they're mandalas, and then I give them to people who are in the dying process or birthing process. And they hold space for what is happening for them.
Beautiful. Yeah.
That is really beautiful.
Hopefully we can, I don't know if I can put those in the podcast notes, but if not, maybe we can create a link so people can see some of those beautiful pictures. You did send them. Thank you. Beautiful. Very beautiful. I think we're pretty close to the end here, and we've gotten most of this covered. I'm wondering if there's anything else you wish we had asked you about.
Well, what's alive in me is I want to ask you what you guys think. What's alive inside you? Because, and I guess this is the message that feels alive right now, is that we're interrelated. We are always in relationship with everyone and everything. And so that's why I want to dialogue with you, because I'm in relationship with you right now, in relationship with the listeners. So it would be, what's important for you? What's meaningful for you? And how can you bring more reverence to yourself wherever you're at in this process of living and dying? So it's not a question.
I like that, though. It can be our listeners and everyone else can reflect and consider that. And yeah, certainly, Ana Luisa and I have been talking about this for, 30 episodes now. 20 of which are on the podcast and 10 more to go. And who knows how long that will go on. And life and death are part of our world. And so being present, holding space, being in acceptance of whatever, being in that flow of when it's good and when it's scary, all of that at once. So I think this is why we do this podcast, is so that people can begin to consider this and have this conversation. And it's not something that gets shuffled aside and ignored. So thank you so much for being a part of it.
Yes.
Is there anything else that I missed, Ana Luisa, that you wanted to ask?
No, this is really lovely. I like how we've been reminded about how to bear witness, how to hold space, how to be mindful throughout life, but more so when people are going through changes, through transformations, through a death. And I think it was very lovely to have this as a reminder today.
All right. Yeah, deaths and births, both happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Tajali. Anything else?
Well, you said you ended with a poem.
Oh, poem. I was going to say,
Yeah.
And I have a little song.
Even better, a song. Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's absolutely great. Can't wait.
This is from the Dalai Lama. It really is an invitation for living and for transition of dying. Every day, think as you wake up. Today I'm fortunate to have woken up. I am alive. I have a precious human life, and I'm not gonna waste it. Oh, every day.
Every day.
Think as you wake up. Today I'm fortunate to have woken up. I'm alive. I have a precious human life, and I'm not gonna waste it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's medicine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, and thank
Yeah.
you both for having this. I've listened to several of the podcasts, and they are amazing. And we need to be having these conversations. So you
Yeah.
both are a gift. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we will
You
be
too.
having more.
Yeah. Yeah, because we keep being born and dying. So as long as that keeps going on, we'll continue. All right. Thank you again, Tajali.
Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. Thanks to my daughter Lucero and Nico Rush, who have cheerfully assisted us as our editors and tech support. Additional resources, transcript of this episode, and links to our social media will be in the podcast notes.
Yeah, thank you so much. And please subscribe, tell your friends, follow us on social media, and consider supporting us through Patreon. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand.